Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today we are looking at the Scorpion. I believe this is a Cobra vehicle. Looking at this, I believe it does say Cobra Scorpion. Yes. So, the Scorpion was first released in the United States back in 1994, and unfortunately, it was discontinued that very same year. Note the wheels of the Scorpion are the same used on the Bug and the Badger and are interchangeable among all three vehicles. This has a shooting missile launcher, which was one of the key notes for it. Looking at it, it looks, just from the initial picture that we have at yojo.com, uh, it looks like it's an oversized um, kind of ferret. Looking just at it. This is a three-seater. There may actually be a little bit of some standing possibilities off to the sides. We'll have to actually kind of take a look as we get through all of our pictures here, as yojo.com has all the individual pieces shown. One of the things that was noted on here, and I'm sure that we're going to get to, is some of these were kind of the tan and black. Some were all tan, and some were all black. And we do see the foot pegs here on the sides, so we could have two additional passengers here, as well as having the cannon shown here. So there are some variants of this, just different colorations of it. All the same vehicle, just kind of depends on where it was purchased as we go through all of our parts and that. So adding to a vehicle, we have a, uh, ground to ground missile launcher, as well as a kind of Gatling gun of sorts, as well as a driver's position. Beyond that, that's really what we have here today. So, looking at it in that regard, from this picture, I'm going to guess that maybe we could operate this as just a two-man vehicle with possibly three passengers. I'll have to look at my stats. And, I've said this in the past too. Sometimes when I'm looking at my stats, when I initially make it, and then I see things that change things up a little bit, maybe things that I miss initially, and I look back at it and I say, yeah, I think this maybe needs to get changed here a little bit. So, looking at the diagrams here, we have a 360-degree rotating missile launcher, pivoting Gatling gun. We have three missiles, one that's in the storage, or one that's in the tube there, as well as two stored away. We have a removable fuel tank, a desert terrain, monster tires, the Oasis mashing front bumper, fuel injection V8 power plant, and opening armor plated hood. All the nice fun features there for the kids and for us as adults to kind of, have extra things for them to do. All right, we can see that there are the two missiles being stored on the side of the vehicle. And like I said, we have one loaded into our launcher, as we have a couple different um, stickers here. Now they're calling it the Desert Scorpion as far as the stickers go, but here it's just being labeled as the Scorpion. All right, so there are two common versions of the Scorpion. The first had a black body with a tan hood, missiles, gas can, bumper, launcher, gun, and axle. The other has a tan body with a black hood, missiles, gas can, bumper, launcher, gun, and axle. Note that some Scorpions have been found with all black parts or all tan parts. So depending on, and it could have been a store thing. It could have just been how they slapped it together. Maybe their quality control wasn't doing the greatest job here. I really don't know. Um, like I've said, this is a time frame where, hey, I'm graduating high school, so I really don't have a huge interest in GI Joe for collecting vehicles and all that stuff at this time. So this is really a time frame where, some of this stuff really isn't reaching out to me as much. Um, mainly because, like I said, I kind of aged out at this point. Now, it doesn't mean I don't like GI Joe. It just means that the stuff that's coming out here, and it's kind of been seen as a huge decline in GI Joe here, because they didn't have all the cartoons. They had the comic book going, but there's a lot of stuff that just wasn't keeping it actively in the kids' minds, so they just couldn't sell it quite as much. So that being the case, it just is what it is. Unfortunately, one of the things I can't bring you here today is the original retail price, which is usually a fun thing to have. I'm going to guess it might be about like $12 to $15. Just throwing out a price point. Being 94, it's kind of hard to say. So, with that, let's get on over to our D6 stats and see what I've come up with here today. All right, so looking at our stats here today for the Cobra Scorpion, keeping this at speeder scale, figuring the length to be roughly about 20 feet-ish. I have a crew of 2, passengers of 3. Cargo capacity is at 45 kilograms, give or take a little bit here. We do have a full coverage. This is ground altitude. Maneuverability, I left it at a 1D plus 2. Um, Not knowing how good this is really going to turn and everything else, it may not have the best turn radius. These might be a little bit more balloon tires going on the sand, so it might sacrifice a little bit of maneuverability for having that extra traction there. So I'm just kind of leaving that out there. Now we do have a movement speed of about 70 miles an hour or 112 kilometers an hour, figuring that this is going to keep a nice speed to it, seeing that it's listed as having a V8 here. Um, Having the oversized tires, being a truck, it might be a little bit more geared for hauling stuff than it really is for the actual speed. Kind of like a standard truck. That way they can hopefully try and haul some extra materials or whatever they need to in a desert climate. All right, our body strength is going to be a 2D. Looking at this, there's a lot of open area here. So it may be armored, but there's a lot of open area that it could possibly use a little extra reinforcement, a little extra housing around the characters. So that's part of my reasoning there. Looking at our weapons, now I have the missile launcher with 4 reloads. So I'm going to just, you know, really it looks like there's only 3 missiles. I'm adding an extra missile reload in there, just being a little generous. You can always change it to 3 if you wanted to, whatever really works for you in your role playing scenario here. And this is going to be at Walker scale. So this is meant to be an anti-armor missile, kind of like a tow missile or something along that line. Fire control is a 4D. Damage is a 7D at Walker scale. Then we have a heavy repeating blaster. This is at personnel scale. Fire control is 2D and damage is 7D. A heavy Gatling gun trying to take out personnel. Hopefully, being able to hold its own, maybe get whatever supplies it needs to get wherever it's going here. Um, I think it works out pretty good. Uh, More of an anti-personnel, but having some capabilities to go up against armor. Something that's kind of fast, going 70 miles an hour, which we may not consider as fast as what some people might. When you're thinking of a highway or something like that, usually you're starting to think like 120 miles an hour, but 70 miles an hour for a military vehicle is fairly quick. A lot of our vehicles start topping off about like 60, 65. Usually, when we're looking at combat vehicles, we're not looking at really fast ground vehicles. It's not usually a sports car. It's usually meant to be a little bit more rugged in those regards. So, usually, we start putting governors on there, especially once we start getting into rough and rugged terrain. We don't want these things to tip over and kind of squish our troops. So that's my reasoning behind all of that. Hopefully, it makes sense to you. And as always, if something here doesn't make sense to you, always feel free to change it. That's, this is just my take on it. Change it for what you need it to be. I did notice I am behind, and I think I mentioned last week that I need to get back to getting these posted up. I'll try and get that done sometime soon, and we'll get these all up and shared with you. So, with that, thank you so very much for joining me today. It's always wonderful having you here. I hope you're doing well, and I will see you in the next video.